Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Oh, hello, friends. Oh, have we missed you? How you doing? That's good. I hope I gave enough time for them to answer.
What's that? I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
Was I using my quiet voice again?
No.
I don't know.
Welcome. I'm going to be using my quiet voice the whole show.
That is true. We have Ryan is stepping up. He is absolutely taking one for the team here. He's battling, but he will battle through.
It's not surprising that less than a week after I tried to review every movie ever made in one podcast, that both my body and, more importantly, my loud know-it-all mouth have kind of completely broken down. So sorry about that, everybody. I'll do my best to struggle on. It'll probably get worse as it goes.
That's okay. We're just gonna
we're all family still, right?
Yeah, and it's we'll cut out the sing-along section. So welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel,
and I'm Ryan,
and we thank you once again for coming and letting us say words into your ear holes. This week we have a big show. We actually have a huge show this week. Again, not as huge as last week. Last week was abnormally huge, but this one we have a pretty ambitious show that we're going to try to get to.
It's normally huge.
Yeah, I guess. But first, before we get to our main topic, of course, I want to run down over the last few weeks. I guess we'll just have there been any, instead of like a recap of what happened last week, anything. It'll be what's been happening over the last few weeks over the holidays.
Sure. Well, a couple things I left out last week just because we saw the writing on the wall we were going to go over, so we skipped a section. And it's worth going back to. I don't want to go back and rehash the whole last year again, but some movies that are going to be relevant, I think, coming up in the next 2 weeks. One of them for sure that I did see over my break that we didn't mention in the year in review were Black Klansman.
Yeah, the Spike Lee film.
Which is really, I haven't seen many sort of Oscar eligible films, but that one should be nominated for an Oscar for sure. And, I haven't seen as many of the other ones around it. Mm-hmm. But I just love it. It wouldn't break my heart at all to see that win a bunch of Oscars because I really thought that was a special film. It is what I guess we would have to say
based on the incredible true story.
And the key word there being incredible. I mean, it's a crazy story.
It's a wild.
There's a lot of it that's enhanced, but mostly its own farcical nature is played up by Spike Lee rather brilliantly. And yet it's a dark, tough enough story that the racial issues in there aren't really it's great. It's full of comedy and craziness because it was a crazy situation. It still doesn't really lose any its bite or profundity either. I really dug it. And it has one of these almost I don't want to say unrelated, it's related or it wouldn't be there, but it has a tag at the end. A lot of these based on the incredible true story movies have here's the collage of the real life people, here's the updates on everybody, blah, blah, blah. This has a cut to reality that's an absolute kick in the nuts in the best possible way. And I'm not, people who haven't seen it yet, A, you should see it. It's fantastic. And B, that ending, it's the kind of thing I normally can't stand, and yet I was blown away by it. I really, really liked that film. And then the other film, which I won't talk much about, but the other movie I really, really liked that maybe up for Best Animated Film is Isle of Dogs, Wes Anderson's film. Stop motion animation with his weird sense of humor and it's these philosophical, and it's great. These dogs are so eloquent, like I say, and philosophical. I really do think that's the proper word. And yet they still have this sort of essence of primal dog to them.
Yeah.
The way he captures that is really delightful. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who loved Fantastic Mr. Fox will love this. People who didn't much love Fantastic Mr. Fox might still really like dogs. If you love dogs, there's something in it for you for sure. If you love animation, they don't do much big scale stop motion anymore, so it is worth checking out.
Yeah, between Isle of Dogs and Into the Spider-Verse, it's actually going to be a really good animated.
Yeah, I think Into the Spider-Verse won the Globe last night, which I
it?
was a little bummed by, but I haven't seen it. I hear it's great.
Yeah.
We don't cover the Globes on the movie show with Joel and Ryan because the Golden Globes are an award show that's voted on by about 85 guys.
Yep. And that's it. And they just get to choose what they want to choose.
Yeah, and even the categories are just sort of designed to maximize celebrity appearances, and I don't hate it, or I'm not mad that it exists, but I don't treat it as terribly legitimate.
Yeah,
I know that
the only
Meryl
reason
Streep shows up
yeah.
for it, so you pay attention. But
and the only reason the Golden Globes is the Golden Globes is because, this isn't even the case anymore, but it used to be the last award show before Academy Award ballots were due.
Right. Now you've got Screen Actors.
Yeah,
and
so that's why the Golden Globes took on this importance, because that one, maybe I should watch that real quick, or maybe I should just vote for that one. That's not the case anymore.
Anyway, we don't. That's why we don't cover that.
Anyway,
much.
I was really I got to see a movie that hopefully more people will get a chance to see at some point. It was a special event movie, but it was Peter Jackson's They Shall Not Grow Old, which is a documentary. If you don't know about it, it's a documentary where Peter Jackson took all of his brilliant digital effects abilities, all of the wonderful stuff that was used in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he applied it to old archival footage of World War I, and it digitally.
And the results take your breath away.
Yeah, it is. It's just fantastic. It's also in 3D, which it was really effective. The colorization. Peter Jackson is apparently a huge World War I history buff and a collector. He owns. He has like an entire warehouse full of stuff from World War I, and which he was able to utilize as they were like color correcting this film, where they could actually look at the an actual uniform and say, this is what we need the uniform to look like.
Right. The idea, just one quick interjection, because I haven't seen it. I've seen some samples of it. But it's important to say the idea is not some Ted Turner idea of World War I footage would be better if it was in color and more people watch it. This is meant to take existing stuff and using the skeleton of that with the technology that was available at the time, which was cameras just barely had existed in history. And to bring it to vivid, realistic life in front of you so that you can really feel like history is not some herky-jerky, scratches all over it thing that you're looking at. It's this real thing that's vivid and that's right kind of in your face.
Yeah, the work that they did to even just take the footage and slow it down so that it was at a frames per second speed that seemed normal, and the amount of work that went with that, and then what they were able to do once they stabilized it and slowed it down and everything, then they employed lip readers to try to figure out what some of these people were saying, actually saying in this footage, and it was tremendous. It was so I'm hoping, and he even says in a little post-film documentary, they have all of this footage that they never used, that they have already started correcting, and they can. And he's like, we have plenty of footage to do other films. We could talk about women in the workforce when the men were at war. We could talk about the air campaigns. And so hopefully this will lead to more of these documentaries. And
I think
this
it will.
world-
It's the kind of thing that will obviously catch on slowly with word of mouth and once it gets online virally. But I really do believe it's going to reach a lot of people, and they're going to. The filmmakers are going to get their shot to do this with a lot of different sort of existing footage. At some point, to the point where it'd be evil of them to do it.
Right.
They'll find a way to twist this. But right now, it's magical and amazing, and I'm very, very impressed with what they did.
So that was the big thing. Now, obviously, if you're listening to us right now, you probably know how to get a hold of us. But what you can do for us is help tell your friends. Tell your friends to come listen to us, and of course, reach out to us on Twitter and Instagram at Ask Joel and Ryan. You can go to the movie page with Joel and Ryan on Facebook. And you can listen to us anywhere you get your fine podcast. iTunes. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please leave a review. And or you can reach us at email, askjoelandryan@gmail.com. And as we always say on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, wow, what a difference.
Wow. And a special shout out to our listener in Sweden. Don't give up on us.
Yeah.
We're very excited to have you. We don't know who you are.
Thrilled to have the Swedish contingent.
We think that's cool, so if you want us to do anything...
Someday, if we ever make T-shirts, we will send you a free T-shirt for listening to us in Sweden.
It'll be in English, though, the T-shirt.
Well, yeah,
Sorry,
but you're highly intelligent in Sweden,
obviously.
So you'll
you're
know.
listening to us, the smartest movie podcast around.
There you go.
Thanks.
All right, so here, let's get on with our huge, ambitious section of the show, which, of course, is the countdown.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, kids, buckle up, because here's what we're going to do. Today we are going to be breaking down. It's a very focused, very succinct thing that we're going to try and address today, and that is the top 10 electronic movie scores
Of all time.
Movie scores, obviously the music. There are lots of iconic themes that we all, know. Especially John Williams themes like Indiana Jones and E.T. and Star Wars
and Superman.
And other.
See, I can still sing.
Yeah, other iconic themes that we all know, and we all
Superman. Superman.
Yeah, not many people know that that's the lyrics.
Here he comes, Superman.
There you go. But we got to stop there because if you sing any more of the lyrics, then we got to pay royalties on it.
Whoops.
But
Time Warner's not messing around.
If you, and if you listen to us, and if you like movies, then obviously you probably already know the power that a score has to elevate the storytelling in a movie, and which Ryan and I also feel very strongly about the role.
Joel
of
and I are. I mean, we don't have a monopoly on this or anything. I know. Who doesn't like music? That's a rare exception to somebody you find somebody who doesn't. Joel and I, music's really, really important. Joel and I don't experience much music as like a sort of background thing in our lives. When music comes into our lives, typically it takes stage. But music for film is inherently background music. Really, sometimes it gets to take stage, but mostly it's there to support the story. But we should mention that we're both sort of musicians. Joel is a more accomplished musician than me, but we're both singers. We're both musical theater artists. We've done a lot of work as far as that. So we have strong feelings about this sort of things, and it seemed like electronic scores, since there's a limited amount of them, relatively, was a good way in to get our first musical score list.
Yeah, and the idea of music of electronic musical scores, the use of keyboards, this new medium with which composers could create, it did change, and played a huge part in some very specific films.
And in popular music
and in popular
at the time.
popular music
it
and in
took
popular
stage.
Culture.
And now it's back a little bit. You know, it went away for a while. It's the same thing in movie scores. It was this new hot thing, and it went away and was very not trendy. There was almost blowback against it as being sort of not timeless in a way a symphony score is.
Yep.
But now it's back, and these every once in a while at least. Based on the material, you'll get a great one again, which we're thankful for.
Yep, and we touch on some of the recent electronic film scores that you're going to hear in this countdown. Also, a lot of them are from the early days of electronic film scoring because the technology was very particular at that time. The keyboards had a very particular sound, and I mean, the Moog synthesizer,
right? Utilized to their best.
Yeah,
keyboards were, I think, they were not used much. I mean, they were, but keyboards were used to synthesize orchestras and horns and other things, and they've been used that way throughout time. But when used at their best, and when people program them very cleverly, and there were a lot of these guys did a great job at this, they create sounds that don't exist. They don't synthesize anything. Yeah. They sound like nothing else that you could create, and in that way they take on their own personality just based on their sound.
Yeah, that's a perfect. I like that.
Yeah.
So let's get going. We're gonna. There's a lot of movies here, but we're gonna try to keep it very succinct as to how we're gonna talk about them. So the first one, our number 10 electronic movie score, is from 1982's The Thing.
Right, by Ennio Morricone, who's most famous for the theme from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Most of you guys have heard that.
Yep.
He also is credited with one of the finest choral and symphonic scores, I think, of all time, which we'll talk about someday, which is 1986-87's The Mission. He's an Italian orchestral score master, and he was hired, oddly enough, by Universal Studios to score a horror movie, which was not his thing at all.
Yep.
And he willingly, which is weird for a composer with a big ego like he has, he was willing to basically do his impression of that film's director, The Thing, John Carpenter. It's called John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
That's actually, his name's in the title, like it is for a lot of his films. John Carpenter had made some great scores up until that point. I think everybody at one point learned how to play the theme to Halloween on the piano with a couple of fingers is all you need. But that's not a great film score necessarily. There's not a lot of music in that, but that theme is instantly puts you in that movie.
Yep.
Carpenter was a good musician, but not a fantastic musician like some of these guys who score films. The electronic musical score for Escape from New York, I think, is fantastic. His electrical musical score that he did with Alan Howarth for Christine, the killer car movie, if you remember that one, I think that's also fantastic. His themes are great. His ability to score his movies, it tends to be very repetitive around his themes, etc. The thing that sets The Thing apart is it takes that great artificial, whatever it is, that great John Carpenter feel to it, and yet it marries to it this guy who really musically is a maestro in Morricone. And because it has those two things, it's diverse and it's sort of deeper and more intricate in a way that Carpenter's films aren't. There aren't any Carpenter scores on this list, and it bums me out a little because I think I just listed a bunch of memorable ones. There's more than that even.
Yeah.
But the work he did and Morricone's willingness to what I say he did his John Carpenter impression when he did that score. It's a case where the two people coming together made something really great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You could almost. This is kind of a tortured metaphor, but if the theme to Halloween is a thing that you can play with two fingers, Ennio Morricone came in and added the other 8.
Sure.
That's
fair to say, and that's why it's so great.
Yeah, so it works. It works. It comes together.
And Ennio's, a lot of his leftovers from The Thing were used in Quentin Tarantino's the Western he just did, The Hateful Eight. And Ennio won the Oscar for that finally in his really pretty advanced old age.
Yeah.
Finally got an Oscar. I think of the scores, The Untouchables, just the list of amazing scores he's done. And he finally got his Oscar with The Hateful Eight. And The Hateful Eight really is just an expansion on some stuff left over from the thing. So we have that to thank for it as well.
I hadn't thought of that. That's really fascinating. I like that. All right, so number nine.
When you think about it, The Hateful Eight is sort of a remake of the thing. Think about that, folks. Just mull that over and get back to me.
Oh, I'm gonna like that. That is gonna be fun to think about. Our number
Certainly,
9.
It's inspired by it in a very obvious way.
Mm-hmm. So number 9 is actually one of my. Number 9 is the appropriate place, I think, for this score, but it is one of my. I'm fascinated by this score.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
It's from it's Witness, 1985.
Yep.
I always butcher his. I can never remember how to pronounce his last name.
Maurice Jarre.
Jarre. It is Jarre.
I believe it's Jarre. If it's not, we apologize.
My apologies to him and his whole family.
Yeah.
But it's Witness, the Harrison Ford film, where he plays a detective and it
goes into hiding with his witness in Amish country in central Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So we have an electronic score to a story dealing with Amish culture.
Well, right.
And somehow the two work. I mean,
this is why it's on the list. They work perfectly, astoundingly. Maurice Jarre, who's most famous for his score for Lawrence of Arabia. This is another old school guy playing with synthesizers essentially for maybe not the first time with him. He did several electronic scores in the 80s.
Sure.
This is my favorite because of the crazy juxtaposition you're talking about. It's not like they put the synthesizers in there and there's all kinds of little sequencing and it's not like that at all. It from the very first notes that you hear, it's this wispy, sort of mournful, simple, like sunrise of a music cue that you first hear.
Yeah.
And it perfectly, even though it's a completely artificial instrument that's doing it, it completely captures the sort of spirit of these people. And at least in my opinion, it's one of those rare electronic film scores where it's not the least bit dated when you hear it. I mean, it is, but it isn't. When you're watching the film, you don't feel like, because there's almost nothing that makes that movie 1985 except a couple of hairstyles, and even those go way early in the movie. You know what I mean? But that keyboard sound, and then of course, that's the atmospherics in it. They're all universally brilliant. The thing that puts the score over the top for Witness is the barn raising cue.
Yeah.
Which is it's a canon, I believe, is the kind of music cue it is, or it's similar to a canon. It kind of builds and repeats, and in the same way that a canon does. And it's just miraculously amazing. Like I say, it's melodically wonderful. It's a wonderful piece of music to listen to on its own, and it all these Amish people working together, building this barn for their neighbors. It plays during that sort of montage, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. Where the score could easily have, you could have like, well, we're going to use an electronic score when Harrison Ford and the Witness are on the screen to show how they don't belong. No, it's not. It's all completely integrated. It's
when
really
they want to
wonderful.
do that, they use don't know much about history.
That's right.
That's the song. It's a song from Harrison when he was in high school. He picked out for the movie, which does that trick again in a throwback way. Witness is an all-time favorite movie of mine. If you've not seen it somehow, I still think to this day it's Harrison Ford's finest screen performance, and it's a near perfect movie. Maybe its ambitions aren't along the lines of like Schindler's List or something like that. It isn't that kind of movie. It's just a thriller. But it kind of like Miller's Crossing and these small handful of little movies that are not super ambitious but have a very pointed target they're going after. Witness is near perfection.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Number 8 on our countdown is Brad Fiedel's The Terminator from 1984. Gung, 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 gung.
Yeah, gung, 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 gung. That's just that alone is... Yeah. James Cameron came to Brad... Is it Brad Fiedel? I thought it was Fidel.
Is it Fidel?
Well, no. Welcome to the movie show with Joel and Ryan, where not a name goes mispronounced. We don't know. Anyway, Brad...
We'll get some of them right.
We're bound to, right?
Yeah.
I got John Carpenter right, so,
I believe I got John Williams.
James
right.
James Cameron was just an upstart filmmaker. He'd been fired from his previous job. He was making this film, and Brad had made a few films and was going to listen to this director's pitch and was kind of, whatever. I don't want this guy. I never heard of him. A low budget thing. And he said after the pitch, he was like, the couple days after, while he was waiting to hear, he was like suddenly wanted desperately to be involved in it because the way James pitches a story apparently is very impressive. It's got him a lot of work where
I'm sure
he wouldn't otherwise be justified based on his history. No more so than Terminator. Brad's music for Terminator is it's machine music. Even all the chase scenes, it's full of crazy electronic pulses and basses and metal scraping and crashing and big stomping echoey synthetic drums. It's the movie's a story of synthetic things taking over and destroying us essentially, and every bit of that is in his music. But again, it's kind of similar to Witness. What transcends in that score, because not anybody could have done it as good as him, but a lot of guys could have banged out crazy sounds. And, that movie didn't have a lot of time for sound editing, so the music does a lot of the work of that, which is also an impressive thing for it. But what makes it really wonderful is that the main theme to Terminator is a love song. You got the big kunk 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 drums, but the melody that comes in is a love song. It's played on the piano late in the movie when they're falling in love, and it's heartbreakingly beautiful.
Yeah,
it's haunting, and it sets you up for this idea of the future that's terrifying. That's in there, but it's also beautiful. That Terminator is essentially a love story. This is something pretty much every further installment got away from. But the great thing about Terminator is this love between these two people, and that's why they're together, and that's why humanity's saved ultimately. And it's pretty cool. It's one of those movies where the more you think about it, the cooler it is, and the music in that film helps every step of the way.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, Brad, he doubled down on that sound when he had, instead of just 3 synthesizers, he had 140, you know what I mean, in 1991 when Terminator 2 came out. That's him as well. That's another great electronic musical score.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything beats the sort of raw, low-budget, but truly inspired 1984 score. It's fantastic stuff.
Number 7 on our list is one of the most iconic musical themes, musical scores of any movie, really, let alone electronic scores.
Right.
And that's...
It's one that almost everybody knows when they hear it. Even if younger generations don't know what it is, you know this tune.
You know this tune, and it's been used in parody. It's been used in every... It is
mostly parody.
Mostly parody at this point, but
right.
It's
been made to look a little silly in recent years.
Sure, but there's a reason why it is like this, because it is an absolute iconic theme, and that's 1981's Chariots of Fire, Vangelis. Do you want to try the Greek last name?
Evangelos Papanthusianastra.
Wow.
I don't know.
We got that, but we
big,
don't
long,
know.
Ridiculous Greek names. No offense to Vangelis. That's why he goes by Vangelis.
Yeah.
He even wrote it in a way that phonetically, if you just say it, you get it right. He knew what he was doing. He knew.
Yep.
He understood. He was living in London at the time, so he was a sort of Greek import. That when when that first thing kicks up in before the melody comes in, before the piano comes in, you kind of know what it is right away. And I'm telling you, get any 10 random people in the room, even if you don't know them, as long as they're spread sort of evenly across the generations, get them all in a room, 10, play that song, and I guarantee you 100% of the time, one of them will start running in place in slow motion.
That's absolutely correct.
Well, maybe more than one, but certainly one of them. And it's actually that sort of silliness and that just that iconography that you can't shed no matter what you do at this point. That almost brings that score down. It's folks. I think some folks will say that's too low on our list for that. But that score is so good throughout, and there's a lot of different themes and a lot of different synths, and it's this story. It's what is it? Post World War I-ish England. So it's, again, not a time of the synthesizers at all. It's this piece in history where the keyboards are sort of bringing these people's internal lives. It's about a bunch of stuffy English people, basically.
Right.
And it really does, each theme captures the essence of the person that it reflects. The iconic main theme aside, I really believe that without that score, that film, it's still probably a pretty great film, but I don't think it wins Oscar for Best Picture without that music. I think it has the music truly to thank for that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
And I don't know that you can say that about many of things on this list. A lot of these scores do elevate the films. The best ones always do. But at Chariots of Fire, and that main Chariots of Fire theme's played at the beginning, it's played at the end. It's not even really featured in the film itself. It sets the stage, and it sends you off into the sunset at the end. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a tremendous. It's
and Vangelis just a truly innovator in electronic music.
Right.
From the get-go, from the early 70s, late 60s, you might even say.
Now we're going to jump ahead about 30 years.
Wow.
To the contemporary, sort of the I think a lot of scoring, electronic scoring, went to TV. And now I think in the last 10 years
sometimes that's just purely for budget reasons.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
You don't have the full 120-piece orchestra in your TV scoring rooms.
Correct.
Probably.
The original West Wing theme, the first 3 episodes of West Wing is a synthesized version, and then they went and were able to record
Then they realized, we got a show.
Yeah, let's go and record it with the orchestra.
Right.
But now, in the last 10 years or so, especially with house music, EDM,
the generation that grew up on these early scores and the early synthesizer music, I've come of age. They're the ones doing scores, and these cats represent that fully.
So this is for the David Fincher film The Social Network, the story of Facebook, 2010.
Did that win an Oscar for Best Score? I thought it did.
Damn it! I should have known that.
If it didn't, we apologize.
But
it was nominated.
Yeah, it was. I know it was nominated. Trent Reznor and Atticus Rose put together this electronic score that is, it's dark, it's bleak.
It's good. And the movie is weird. The movie's written by Aaron Sorkin. King of the Walk and Talk. There's not a lot of walk and talks in it, but it has that sort of energy to it. The dialogue, the way it's written is Quebec, 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 and the music is the music makes you feel like this is literally bringing the world to an end.
Yeah,
it's not like the Terminator, but it's mournful. There's a lot of piano in it. There's a lot of just minimalist sort of noise in it, kind of like you would expect from those guys. And there's one piece you wanted to talk about in particular. It's pretty high.
Yeah,
they didn't really write.
No, they didn't write, but they
adapted to great use.
Yeah, Hall of the Mountain King, which you might not recognize that name, the Hall of the Mountain King.
In the Hall of the Mountain King by Grieg. Look it up on YouTube and you'll hear it.
But once you hear it, you'll go, that tune.
That's actually public domain. If I could sing that, I'd do it.
That's
that song. You all know that one, right?
But of course Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails. It becomes this. Yeah, I think that, and it's really quite effective.
Yeah, I agree.
So moving on, as I mentioned before, in those, a lot of scoring went to TV. and a lot of film scores, television.
A lot of rock
musicians,
and
a lot
jazz
of rock,
musicians got into filming. Who had otherwise been in bands and wouldn't have done scores, got into film music and TV background music and TV themes because they could do them on their own.
Right.
On these synthesizers, have these fully fleshed things.
So you have Jan Hammer, who did everything for Miami Vice, and while there are a lot of electronically scored shows, I think that the work, his work in Miami, the music in Miami Vice, even the scoring music was a really integral part of that show.
Yeah, it's overshadowed by some of the pop songs, both old and created for the show, that are really an iconic part of that show. But the bleeps and blorps on Jan's keyboards were really important part of it as well. That theme song is one of the most frantic and cool sounding artificial pieces of music out there.
Absolutely. And then there's this one almost made the list, but
Right.
the Beverly Hills Cop score by Harold Faltermeyer,
Yeah.
of course Axel F.
The big hit.
The Axel F. Yeah, I mean that was a hit on the radio. That was played all the time on the radio.
Sure.
Because it was so popular. But these guys were heavily influenced by our number 5 score on the countdown.
Yeah, who I think are the godfathers of electronic in terms of film music.
Yeah, 1981, Tangerine Dream, and their score for the movie Thief.
The Thief, yeah, with James Caan. It was Michael Mann's movie, speaking of Miami Vice. He utilized a lot of this popular music and state-of-the-art stuff, kind of the way Fincher does today. And you could have picked, of all the Tangerine Dream scores I could have picked, I kind of picked the first one to come along that's iconic, because I think all their following scores, with only an exception or two, are of a piece. They're very kind of similar approaches to the music. Thief is this urban thriller. The streets are wet. It takes place almost, not entirely, but almost entirely at night in shipyards, in cold steel office towers, you know what I mean? There's this great, the credit sequence is this fantastic, where you just hear Tangerine Dream's gurgly sequence. That's Tangerine Dream's always sequences. When I say sequence, that's something like, it's not even played by a person. It's the computer plays you this sequence of notes. It sounds very mechanical. And then they build all this other stuff on top of that. That's their style mostly. But it's this beautiful thing, this dark alleyway where you start with this kind of two rows of fire escapes next to each other, and you just pan down it while these names in this ice blue font play across, and you listen to the music, and you were in the city. It's chic. It's in 1981 anyway. It's the most modern sounding thing you've ever heard. It's a little dated now, but that hasn't hurt the movie, because the movie's very 1981, in fashions and whatever. Michael Mann's films, say what you want about them. I think most of them are very compelling. They are not timely. They are very, very much of their time. And in that way, if you like them when they're new, and if you wait long enough, you like them as sort of a time capsule, and that's how Thief works. Before I move on, I should mention some of the other great Tangerine Dream scores, because there's so many, and you're not going to hear any of these.
My personal favorite, my favorite themes is in Risky Business.
Yeah, Risky Business is a great score.
Yeah, where they're making out, I'll say for PG rated. Risky
Business is not PG rated.
No, but
don't show your kids.
Don't show your kids.
Business.
But it's Rosanna Arquette, Tom Cruise. They are,
or Flashdance.
Yeah.
Don't be idiots. It's just because you liked it when you were a kid.
Don't put your kids through that.
Yeah, really. Anyway. Or at least until they're teenagers, and it's fun to watch them be embarrassed by it.
But
I'm for.
But that scene, the Tangerine Dream music,
the cue,
that,
I know it. It's called The Dream, and it's an amazing cue.
Yeah, it's a wonderful cue.
Yeah, and their music for Firestarter really elevates that movie.
Yep.
Makes it almost feel like a John Carpenter movie when it's sadly nowhere near as cool as a John Carpenter movie. A musical score that I love, although it's hard to lay the brilliance of it all at Tangerine. So another Michael Mann film, The Keep, which is a World War II horror fairy tale. It's one of the weirder, crazier 80s movies out there. Tangerine Dream are a big part of that. And that's one of the sort of holy grail lost soundtracks. And then what's my other one? Oh, and you got to mention they rescored the Ridley Scott's Legend, which we talked about in our fantasy films.
Yeah.
And that's very, very popular album and a really great ethereal electronic score. Kind of their last big one. So Tangerine Dream, I rate The Thief the highest. But it's just Tangerine Dream's a wealth of fantastic electronic music.
Right. And you referred to Tangerine Dream, kind of as the Godfather. At this, I do want to mention, and I want to have you talk about Giorgio Moroder.
Oh yeah, he's not on the list. Yeah. Giorgio Moroder is kind of the most famous sort of Italio disco songwriters, but he also did a very important musical score back in the late 70s for Midnight Express, which is a Turkish prison movie. It's a pretty harsh movie. But it's got this really cool synthesizer score in it. And it's not the earliest one. I mean, you can trace synth scores all the way back. But I believe it's the first one that sort of set the stage for all the rest of these, so we should mention it.
Yeah.
Giorgio also did the background music very iconically for Scarface.
Sure.
A handful of years later in 1983. That's not on our list either, but that's one that a lot of fans of electronica really dig.
So number 4, moving on our list, we jump forward to the current days of electronic film scoring.
That works.
They're all using electricity, Joel.
Yeah, Joel. They didn't do it with the lights off, Joel, or by candlelight.
Cliff Martinez's score for the 2011 film Drive.
Yeah, Drive. Drive is a film a lot like Thief. It's 2011's sort of version of that. Sort of lone guy in a criminal world. Trips into love with somebody. And the dude's like, it's Ryan Gosling who plays our lead character. I can't even remember his name. I think he has a name, but he's like the driver. We'll just call him that. He is this coolest looking new wave guy that you've ever seen, even though the film doesn't take place in the early 80s. It's obviously very, very influenced by it.
Yep.
It's full of these synthwave songs, 2 or 3 of the very best all-time synthwave songs. Those aren't Martinez's, but his music, those songs, the look, Gosling's leather jacket, just the whole kind of the whole thing is just awesome. And Martinez he's a fantastic composer in general. In Drive, what makes that special amongst his scores is that the music really gets time and time again in the film. It gets its time to shine in a way. In some of his other movies, he's really just there to support the action. Carey Mulligan once said of Drive that, oh yeah, that's the movie where they paid me a bunch of money to sit and look lovingly into Ryan Gosling's eyes for 3 months. It's almost a silent movie at times. I mean, it isn't. There's a plot and everything, but it's all in the eyes, man. Everything that happens to these people is between the lines, and between the lines is filled with fantastic music from start to finish. That's a super violent movie, though, so again, it's the movie show with Joel and Ryan warning.
You just...
Well, I hate to say, go see it, it's great, and then
Yeah.
people are like, that dude got his head shut off, and this person got tortured. And I just always kind of want to warn you when the movie's a harsh movie.
And
For a love story, which it is, it's extremely harsh.
I'm just envisioning someone emailing us going, man, I watched that movie and the guy got his head shot of it, and our response would be, yeah, but didn't it sound cool?
Yeah,
Wasn't the music awesome?
Sounded pretty great, didn't it? Yeah.
Anyway, for our number 3 film, we go back to Vangelis. But this is and it's great. This is one of my all-time favorite scores too.
It's really good.
1492, Conquest of Paradise, from 1992, when there was
500 years
couple
after Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yep.
This is the better of the two Columbus movies
Yep.
by far that
Yeah, by
came out
far.
that year. It's Gerard Depardieu as the titular character. I guess his name isn't in the title, but Christopher Columbus. It's a pretty dark tale about Columbus discovering America, I have to say.
Yeah.
What he goes through to do that mission and what happens when he gets there. I think it still sort of portrays him as a visionary and a hero in a way that modern audiences may not like.
Right.
But it doesn't really shy away from the horrors that Europe brought to the New World either. That's definitely there. And throughout all of it is this, boy, Vangelis. It's almost cheesy to like him. People acquit him with people like Yanni and John Tesh and stuff because he was labeled as a new wave or new age artist, and to some degree he is. He's got that as part of his repertoire, but the 1492 score is chock full of history. It's got chant in it. It's got all this old sort of pre-Renaissance European pieces of music. The main theme in it is it has a soaring, amazing sense of adventure, which really setting off to cross the Atlantic was the boldest thing you could possibly do at that time in history.
Yeah.
So it has that to it, and yet when things get dark, man, his score takes you down into the kind of depths of hell with the movie.
Yeah.
In a great way.
It's a
That
stunning
score from
score.
start to finish, melodically powerful. It's like one beautiful song after another. You almost can't believe that it's more great music than that movie even needs.
Oh, that's actually I like that. Yeah.
Well,
That's
it's got
'cause
more
it's-
ideas than you hear. Melodic musical ideas that you actually hear and experience in the story.
Yeah.
Movies really only need a couple, 3, if that. Some of them don't even get that these days.
Yeah.
And I'm not even. That's not even a criticism. They don't. For you to remember, Black Panther's theme, you don't want to hear 8 other themes. It just muddies up the works.
Right.
You want that one thing that says, "Ba-da, here's your character." But Conquest of Paradise gets away with more than you can imagine.
It's a lot, and again, this is one of those 1492 Conquest of Paradise is by no means as good of a film as Chariots of Fire.
No,
it's not even. It's
a visually amazing film, and it's got all these period, flourishes.
But again, it is highly enhanced by
no question
the audio experience that goes along with the visuals.
Yeah.
So it's a tremendous score.
And even if you don't want to watch a movie about Columbus, if you love big synth music that's drenched in history, that album is perfectly listenable as an album and not just as things twinkling in the background.
For our number 2 film, we're going to whip all the way back. We're going to whiplash back to 2010 to a sequel.
All the way back to 2010.
All the way back to 2010.
Remember, kids? Remember how small the smartphones were?
Frankly, I meant Back to the Future into 2010 because we were in 92. Now we're going to jump to 2010 with Daft Punk and their score for Tron Legacy.
Right, which is a fantastic score. It's number 2, and that's really good for a modern score. Daft Punk, I think, people have varied opinions about them. I don't even have any of their albums here, really, but I think they're both musical geniuses. You can't talk about Tron Legacy without giving credit to Wendy Carlos's original Tron score, which is not on our list, but is as innovative and memorable electronic score as is out there. Wendy Carlos also responsible for that great opening driving up through the mountains in The Shining. That's her composition as well. And Tron has this memorable themes and all this. It meant to sound like you're inside a computer, which it does. Daft Punk were very inspired by that, but their score isn't really like that at all. Their score is basically straight out of the disco. that's not bad. It's kind of like everything is a dance. The games in Tron are a dance. All the action sequences, the way people appear and disappear. I mean, the magical world is all a dance. The motorcycle chase at the beginning, even in the real world, it's a ballet, and their music is this pulsating, bit of wonderment. It's really, really fantastic. Yeah. It's another one where it's maybe the one on this whole list where you say this, if you just like modern electronica and dance music, this is just a fantastic album from start to finish. Probably a little better than the movie deserved, maybe. I mean, Tron Legacy is a pretty great movie for a Tron sequel.
For a Tron sequel, it's
smarter than probably, maybe even a little too smart. It's maybe a little esoteric in its meanings. Its deeper meanings. Yeah, kind of like the Matrix movies where they
it's ambitious.
Packed it with all this stuff, and what you really just remembered was the big, kung fu fight scene.
Yep.
But the score is not a letdown, and Tron Legacy had to have a fantastic electronic score to justify its existence. That it had to nail that part.
Yeah,
that's a credit to Wendy, and it's a credit to the Daft Punk boys because they knocked that one out of the park. It's fantastic.
And it did. It's a tremendous score.
Yeah.
So our number one theme, once again, is from Vangelis.
Yeah.
He appears 3 times on this score, and for 3 tremendous scores, 3 very different movies.
Yeah.
3 incredibly different movies.
Well, and the Vangelis movies that aren't, I might as well count them down, that aren't on here. His version of The Bounty with Anthony Hopkins and Mel Gibson is an incredibly haunting and powerful score.
Yep.
His music for Costa Gravas' Missing with Jack Lemmon, and I think Sissy Spacek, but I don't want to say that for sure. But either way, it is just piano based and is beautiful and gorgeous. There's one other big one too that
Alexander.
Oliver Stone's Alexander. Not a great movie, but a big epic movie with a gigantic, massive, epic score.
Yep.
And because Vangelis is Greek, and Alexander the Great was Greek, I mean, he was on board with that. It was kind of a gift to us. It was kind of a goodbye present because I don't think he's going to do scores anymore.
Right.
But this one takes the cake, even over 1492, even over Chariots of Fire, which is iconic and amazing.
Yeah, in terms of an entire front to back score, and its role in telling this story, 1982's Blade Runner.
Right, which is already one of my favorite films of all time, so I tend to gush over it. But I really don't think that you can hype the musical score to Blade Runner enough. The synthesizer swashes and melodies perfectly put you into the world of that story. They capture it perfectly. The score isn't just the sum of its electronic parts. The synthesizers, they're a big part of it, but it's got Chinese sort of weird Chinese singing and jingles and different instruments and stuff. It's got Arabian chants. It's got the giant cavernous percussion that sounds like it was recorded in an airplane hangar.
Yeah.
It's got these sort of throwback standard light jazz vocal tunes in it. It's got what should be the cheesiest, and maybe on its own it's a little cheesy, the cheesiest Rhodes electric piano and saxophone love themes in all of films. But because of Blade Runner's neo-noir-nish, all of that fits perfectly into place. And then by the end, when he's really just banging and crashing in this 9-minute cue called Wounded Animals, where they're fighting it out, our big final showdown, every piece of that, it greatly enhances the action on screen. So Vangelis, who usually favors the music,
right,
he does it all in Blade Runner. It's all there. Every single thing you can do to enhance and make a musical score fantastic, memorable,
atmospheric.
Exactly. Shut up when it needs to.
Right. Or
just be noise when noise is what's the best choice.
And reflect the setting of the world of Blade Runner, where it is a world very much where all of these cultures have been smashed together.
Right.
This idea of the future where that it is like true world community economy, everything.
Vangelis was very unhappy with the way his score was used in that movie. I don't know. I just don't know how he could have been. Yeah, he had some very specific beefs. He refused to release his soundtrack. Soundtrack didn't come out till the 90s. And even then when it came out, it was like mixed with 90s versions of... Like, there's no way to get the proper Blade Runner score unless you dig deep, ladies and gentlemen. Those cues are out there. But they're hard to come by because he obviously they made up because Ridley and he did 1492 together, which they're both very proud of. And I think in retrospective, Harrison Ford didn't like working on Blade Runner. Now he loves it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Vangelis didn't like it. It was a tough go for everybody. It was a labor, and it was hated when it came out. Now it's loved. Yeah. And now they all kind of love it. It's Vangelis's, maybe not his best musical work. It's close. It's certainly his best film work. It's the best. It's one of the best scores ever. If we do a best score list, you might see it pop up again. But as far as electronic scores that are primarily in those synthetic sounds, masterful.
Yeah, it's great and absolutely deserving of its number
We were
one
talking,
spot.
even the end theme comes in. It's something you never even heard in the movie before.
Yeah.
And but it fits perfect. It absolutely belongs there. And as a piece of music on its own, it's brilliant. Yeah. It's such a generous score. I don't know. That's the term I would use. He just keeps giving you great stuff. Yeah. So it's time, just because of the twinkling piano in Chariots of Fire, to, if you've ever wanted to tease Vangelis for the way he's been parodied, you got to remember that bits of parody, they come from things that were iconic in the first place because they were touched by genius.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect way to say
That's my tribute to Vangelis.
So if you like all of these things, we have done you a great service.
Yes.
If you can go, and obviously we will link to all of this on
look
our
for
Facebook
the links.
Page.
We're in the
Twitter,
process of creating it as we record this.
But
it's coming.
By the time you listen to this, it will be up. But we'll have created a YouTube playlist
where you can sample some of this cool music.
And it makes for a great listen.
We'll try and keep it under 1,000 cues because I get a little carried away. But we'll try and keep it to just the essence of the stuff. And then if you're more interested in something, you can go down the YouTube rabbit hole. It'll take you to places you want to go sometimes.
But you can listen to all of this, so you'll.
We wish you could have played you bits, although it'd be a 2-hour show if we could have.
But we can, if you go to YouTube, look for The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan on YouTube. You will find us,
Look for the familiar and brilliant logo.
Yeah, and all of these songs will, a lot of these cues, we'll pick out some of our favorite cues. Obviously, things that the iconic themes that you recognize they'll be there. Some deeper cuts. We might even throw in a perfect example of a not very good electronic music score.
Yeah, we might have a couple surprises in there. Give everything a try. Yep. It should be fun.
So be on the lookout for that.
Yep. It's an important part of this, I think, is if you want, is to hear some of the music. We wanted to offer that up. That was Joel's idea. It's really smart.
And of course, you'll find out all of this information again on Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter and Instagram.
It's a good
The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, our page on Facebook, otherwise known as The Social Network. Synergy.
Hey, we're grateful for all that Facebook has done for I know I was dissing on it, but please don't block our account.
Because we know you're listening.
That's our main place to interact with you good people.
Obviously, if you're listening to us on iTunes, please give us a rating. It will help us spread the word.
Yeah, you guys, any likes, shares, any of that stuff. Yep. We don't want to beg, but if you're just taking 2 seconds to click like on something, man, it makes a difference to us.
It helps us a lot.
We see the statistics every day. It really means a lot. So if you've already done it, thank you. If you do it again in the future, thank you. If you're just listening and don't want to do that, we understand, but thanks for listening.
Yeah. So our
anybody got a question?
I think they do have we have a question. Go ahead.
I have a question. Who gave you the right to play God?
What the hell's going on out here?
Why do I bother?
What is the point in doing anything?
How dare you!
What more do you want from me?
I have a question.
And today's question comes from dear listener Scott Sanbo.
Hey, I know him.
Yep.
That's not a surprise.
No. our friends and family.
We don't know who's listening to us in
Oh,
Sweden,
boy.
but
no, but we know.
And we're lucky. We have a lot of friends and family that listen to the show. But you guys,
and they still listen.
It's not a big secret.
They're telling us that they still listen to the show.
That's thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We hope that you are, and we hope that you're enjoying it. So anyway, so Scott's question, and this is funny. I can't remember if this actually harkens back to something that you were telling me before before you hit record. Scott's question is, what is your go-to movie? And I added or TV show. But what is your go-to movie when you want to fall asleep?
Oh boy.
Do you do that? Can you fall asleep to films?
Look, I pretty much fall asleep every night to a film.
Okay.
Sometimes I stay up till the end of the film and then I go in my bedroom and I turn on another film and fall asleep to that in my bed. Or I fall asleep out here on the couch, turn it off, go into the bedroom and I'm still sleepy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I around 11 o'clock, midnight at the latest, I start a movie. I don't intend really in this point in my life to get through many of those.
Yeah.
This is my ritual. I'm a single guy. I love movies. I don't like to have the news on. I don't like to have reality TV on. I don't like to have, there's like cinema, some of it's trash, right? We admit that. We love it or hate it or whatever, everything in between. But cinema it's a closed, encapsulated story in, it's kind of, they're all about the same length-ish, It's not TV. It's not serialized. When I fall asleep during it, when I watch the next episode, I don't know what's going on. I watch movies I've already seen before.
Yep.
Pretty much one a day as I'm going to sleep. Tonight, it's going to be the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still by Scott Derrickson.
Wow.
I call it Keanu Barata Nikto.
Yeah.
I don't expect to get to that end of that movie, and it'll be great when I don't because the end is stupid and the beginning is actually really intriguing and kind of awesome. So it's a perfect movie to go to sleep to. But to me, God, the answer to that question is all of them. Anything you've seen.
Really?
Well,
but it's something you've seen before.
I can name some that don't fall asleep to that.
Yeah, that's the main thing for you is that it's just something that you've seen before, but you just
it's
put it
key
on.
because you fall asleep, you wake up at a loud moment, you watch another part of it, you fall asleep again. A movie that you've seen before.
Yeah.
That you know what happens, you're not missing anything by being drowsy, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're not, watching all the way to the end, you're getting what I call, it's cool. I missed this part, that part, and whatever, but I woke up for the ending, so I didn't really watch it, but I got the Prisoner of Azkaban experience. And that's good enough.
That's funny you mentioned that. That's
actually
good
enough to send me off into the night feeling.
That's funny that you mentioned that. The Harry Potter films are often ones my wife will choose.
Sure.
I used to be able to fall asleep. I can't anymore. I have to put earplugs in while my wife is. It's something that's happened in the last maybe 10, 12 years or so where I can't fall asleep to movies or television and things like that. When I was younger, my go-to was actually this VHS tape I had of all of the episodes or a lot of the episodes of Mr. Show with Bob and David, the sketch comedy show, because it was like this warm blanket for me. I would just like sit and laugh myself to
me
sleep.
That engages in an emotional part of me that's too lively.
Yeah, I couldn't
so
do
I
it now.
admit I that's not the kind of thing I would watch, but that's a cool.
I couldn't do it now.
The principle's the same. It's for you whatever brings you comfort. And to me, the old classics. And I consider the Harry Potter films, they're modern classics, but I consider them classics. Most of them are great. And any movie like that, for my money, something, a crime drama, sometimes if it's atmospheric or whatever, but what I like more than anything and what makes me chill out and relax is something that takes me to a faraway world, back in the past, a different planet, a different universe of the story, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In the very first episode, I called it transportive stories, and those bring me comfort. I love historical epics. I love fantasy, family fantasy movies. And for falling asleep, the familier the better. Some dark fantasy works good too, but the if I'm going to watch a darker, spookier movie with violence and stuff, and I want it to be one I've seen before, so that I know what's coming and it can't bug me. I don't want to go to sleep with icky thoughts in my head. Yeah, it affects the way you dream, everything.
Yeah.
But if I'm super familiar with it, it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
That familiarity mixed with the magic of movies taking you to someplace you've never been before and could never go. To me, those two things combine in it, and there's so many movies that do that. That's why I love movies.
Yeah.
That I never run out of movies to fall asleep for. I know I didn't really pick one.
No, it still answers the question, because it's not so much a specific title; it's a type.
Yeah,
it's a type. For me, if I, like I said, when I used to fall asleep to something, it was this thing that was just funny to me. It was just it was like, I could recite the sketches. So I knew every single beat, every single moment. So it was easy for me to enjoy and fall asleep.
It made you grin more than chuckle uncontrollably.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I get it.
At that point,
I get it. That's exactly what I'm into as well.
So thank you, Scott, so much for that question.
It's a
and
great
obviously,
question. Thanks,
if you have any questions, you know where to reach us at all the things.
All the stuff.
Thank you so much for listening to this musical episode. We hope you enjoy. Please, if you would like, go to YouTube and seek out that playlist that we're creating for you. It's some fantastic music. That's kind of how I spent my day leading up to the time where Ryan hit record.
Yeah, and can I say one more thing before we close out our first ever music episode?
Absolutely. I didn't realize you were actually asking me.
Yeah. We're into a groove there, and I like to, before I interrupt, I like to,
Yes, Ryan, you have
Joel.
the floor.
Yeah, okay, cool. I just want to say our show is blessed by several pieces of music, but one in particular that we were very, very fortunate to have one of the authors' blessing to use for our show. It's the music you hear in the intro to the show and the music you hear at the end of the show. It's a song by the sort of new wave power pop group, The Producers. We like to name drop The Producers. Our illustrious voiceover artist does that every show. But you may not know about that song, and we may not mention it a lot. At some point, maybe if we have our own website, we'll throw up their name so it's there in perpetuity. But a guy named Van Temple from the band The Producers said, hey, go. When I asked him if I could use the song, he said, go for it, which I was so grateful to hear, because I had it all planned how I was going to use it. You know what I mean? And I think its theme and everything, sits well with our show, and I think it's sort of gurgly, happy power pop. Who doesn't like power pop, right? That's just
absolutely
yeah.
So that's where power pop is.
The song is
very
called
much Ryan and,
the song
and
is
Ryan
called She Sheila, which is I call it imaginary girlfriend, some object of this guy's desire. So many 80s songs, that's what they were about. This is a pretty clever one. She's on TV, she's on the movies, and they talk about her throughout the song. It's on the album called You Make the Heat from 1982. You probably can't buy that at Target and CD anymore. But, used vinyl is back, and I bet you that and their first album called The Producers, those two albums are power pop classics. They're as good as any Cars album. They're as good as any Cheap Trick album, in my opinion. It's a little different, a little more manufactured sounding, but just in terms of each song is awesome, and the melodies and the harmonies and the playing, all of it, and the attitude, man. Nothing beats skinny tie new wave attitude, right?
Yeah.
So they wrote way more cool songs than the Knack ever did. It's just my shout out, my thank you to them, and if you're interested in them or you're interested in my opinion about something, The Producers, we wouldn't be the same show without them.
We thank them, and we thank you for joining us for this week's episode of The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Please join us next week, where we can't wait to...
Well, we don't know what
we're going to talk about, but we will be here, and we will talk to you from the big blue couch.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's The Producers, circa 1982, to play us out.